This 2 days in class, we're going to be working on multiple choice tricks, which are great ways to do multiple choice questions when you're not sure what to do, and also to check your answers to make sure you didn't make silly mistakes. So the first one, all of these questions were taken from the June 2019 test, which was a test we did recently in class. So the first question is question 19 from the June 2019 test. I do have the June 2019 test here, and I'll just show you so you're familiar with what we're working with. So here's the test, and if I go to question 19, I just cut and pasted this one. So this is an equation. We can solve it by squaring both sides using algebra, but we can also just plug in our answer choices. So to plug in answer choices, and we're going to write that as the trick, and I'm just going to call it plug in answers. This is a basic trick I think maybe a lot of you know about already. Some of you already probably use it on your own. So I'm first going to check the -8. So -8, we store it as x. I'm just going to use x versus b because it's easier to get to. So I'm going to type in the one side of the equation, which is just x, which we should know should output -8 because that's what I stored. And then I'm going to type in the other side of the equation, which has a little more to it. So 2x squared minus 64. So here, when I look at my answer choices, I get that -8 and 8 are the two sides of the equation. Those aren't equal, so that is not one of my answers. So I'm going to cross this out. This has plus or minus 8 in it, so I'm also going to cross it out because I know -8 doesn't work. So I've really gotten rid of two answers at once. So now the only thing we have left to do is see if the 8 works. So I'm storing 8 as x. I can go back up and highlight what I've already typed in. I'm going to erase this, so this is off here. So we're typing in x, and the second side of my equation is that. And now we see that the two sides, x and the square root of 2x squared minus 64, are equal. They're both equal to 8. So 8 is an answer. If neither of these answers worked, I could have picked the no answer solution, which is just the empty brackets. So that will work on any type of equation, and we'll be looking at the rest of the test to try to find different things for that. Now the second trick is called choose your own number. So choose your own number. So we don't necessarily have answer choices to use, right? There aren't any like x equals 5 or anything like that. But we have something algebraic with variables, and we're seeing if two things are equal. So in this case, we have these 4 identities, 4 equations, and they're asking which one is false, so which one is not an identity. So we can, because an equation that's always true will be true for any number, we can store whatever number we want and see if it works and makes the two sides equal. So going through this, I usually use the number 2.5. For x, if I had multiple variables, maybe I use 3.5. I like to use a decimal because sometimes if there's factors in the problem, like I have an x minus 2 as a factor, if I store a positive 2, it ends up making things 0 and like harder to tell what's right. So my go-to number for choose your own number is 2.5. But that's just what I choose to use, and anything should work decently. So I'm going to type in the first side of the equation, x to the 3/2 squared, and type that in. And then I'm going to type in the other side, and you should have this worksheet. Let me actually see if this is a little hard to see. Let's see if we can zoom in a little bit and have it still fit. I think this should be fine, yes. So then we can see the x ones a little better. Does that equal the 4th root of x cubed? So I need to go to the math menu to get my x root. That's number 5. So the 4th root of x to the 3rd. Okay. So it doesn't look like those two are equal. So right now it looks like number 1's my choice. So now I also notice that the right side of my equation is the same for each one, except for this one. So when I go to choice 2, I'm going to type in The left side, x to the third to the 1/4. And I didn't really get my parentheses right, so I'm just going to get this in here. And I'm going to need to delete this exponent because sometimes stuff gets entered incorrectly. So I want to arrow over one more time and then put to the 1/4 on the outside, just so it's exactly like I see it. So that side does equal 1.98, and we already know this side equals 1.98. So I have 1.98 equals 1.98. That works. I'm looking for the false one, so I'm not going to pick that one. This one I got 15.625 equals 1.98, and I guess it's technically 1.99 if we round, but we're just trying to check for equality, so that doesn't matter a whole lot. I think it's number 1. I'm going to check the other ones just to make sure. So my next one is x to the 3/2 to the 1/2. That works also. That's equal to that 1.99 number. So this one works. And then the last one, x to the 2/3 squared. So now I'm looking for a different number. I have 3.39, seeing if that equals the cube root of x to the 4th. So that's choice 4, x to the 4th, and that one also works. So each of these work, except for one. One is my answer. So those are your two main go-to tricks. And because this is an algebra test, there's lots of variables. And really most problems with variables, unless they're about a specific word problem formula or something, can use one of those two tricks. I chose question 12 because it's actually a combination of those two tricks. So here I have an equation, right? And I have solutions for x. But I also have this variable w. So it says, what is the solution when the equation wx squared plus w equals 0 is solved for x, where w is a positive integer? So I have to plug in for x, but I have to choose your own number, which we're going to call Sion, which is what we just did. Choose your own number for w. Now I do have a restraint for w. I have to pick a positive integer. So maybe I'm going to pick 3 for w. And I'm going to avoid any of the answers for w. I'm just going to pick something that's not there just because that could kind of throw a wrench in things. So now I'm going to store 3 for w. And if you want to get to any of your other non-x letters, it's alpha, and then you can press that, w. And then I'm going to go through the answer choices here. Now, since I have an imaginary answer, I am going to go to my mode button and change it to A plus BI mode, just because that's going to make the problem a little more compatible. So I'm going to store -1 as x. 3 is already stored as w. I'm going to type in w x squared plus w and see if it equals 0. So that didn't work. Okay, so it's not -1. Then I'm going to store the second answer choice as x. And then from here, it's pretty quick because I already have everything typed in. I already have my w stored. That one equals 3. So here I got an output of 6. Here I got an output of 3. Neither of those are the answer. I'm trying to get it to equal 0. So I'm going to do 6 store as x. That equals 111. And then I'm going to do I, which is right here on the decimal, store as x. And I missed, I think I pressed the wrong button. I need to press second, not alpha. Store as x. And then I'm going to try that equation. This gave me 0 plus 0i, which is a little weird, but that is 0. Now, since there's two solutions, just to be sure, I'm also going to store -i. Pressing the wrong button. -i store as x. And that also gives me 0. Now, it's putting it in this form because I'm in A plus BI mode, which is what I need for it to work with the i's. But that is, and you can tell by the other answers, that is the one that makes it equal to 0. So this is the correct answer for that problem. And that was a combination, pick something for W and then store the answers for X. So we have a couple more problems on the next side. This one is graphing, but we're also going to have to pick numbers. So it's kind of a combination. And I don't know if we think of graphing as a trick, but we know that graphing is often an easier way to do algebra problems that are either really hard, we forget how to do, or are not possible without a graph. So this is graphing, but we're also going to have to choose our own numbers. Once again, it's a little limited because we want to choose numbers that make sense. So here we have a graph, and we're asking which of these will make the correct graph. Now, I can't just pick any numbers, right? I need to pick basically numbers for A, B, and C that make sense for the picture. So for A, maybe I decide that that looks like 3, okay? Maybe I decide that this one, negative B, looks like it's -1. So we're going to say B is 1, okay? And then C, okay, we are going to say is 4. So looking at this one, basically here, this gives me an A value of 3. This is a little tricky over here. If this is negative B, we're going to say that B itself is 1, right? Because if negative B is -1, then B is 1, and C is 4, because negative C is -4. So we're going to try each of these. We're going to store for A, B, and C. And this can be estimated, right? We're just going to try to see if, for a graph that looks similar to this. So I'm going to clear everything out. 3 store as A, 1 store as B, and 4 store as C. Okay. So now I'm going to go to my graphing screen, and I am going to try the different choices. Now, in the interest of time, I do know which one's going to work correctly. So I'm going to do that one, but I'm also going to do one that's wrong. So because I see this double root at this negative C value, I'm pretty sure that it's either 2 or 4 because I know there's something with a squared. And when you use tricks, I do want to point out that you can kind of make logical decisions. Like, so you know part of the problem, or you think you know what the answer is, you can check specific answer choices in an order just to kind of save yourself time. So I'm going to try choice 2 first is what I'm typing in. So Zoom 6 to start out, and I see this one is backwards. Okay. Now I might want to change my window so I can see those minimum and relative minimum and maximum points. So -50 to 50, I don't know. This is not necessary, but if you really want to see, and then we're going to actually make this one go down to maybe like -300 because that looks like a pretty low minimum. Okay, but I can see that's not what I want. It's kind of backwards. So that gives me good faith that choice 4 is correct. And this one does look decent. Now, because of my viewing window, it's not going to look perfect. Okay, there are things I can do just so you can, kind of be sure. I'm going to make this a 20. And I'm going to make this a -150. Okay. So right here, remember, I chose numbers for A, B, and C that might not be the actual numbers. And if I had the actual numbers, these would look a little bit more in proportion to where they should be. But I have the general shape of the graph with the roots looking correct. If I graphed 1 and 3, which I'm not going to take the time to do, I would see that those are definitely not the choice. So this is choice 4. So in summary, these tricks, graphing, choosing your own number, and plugging in numbers are really helpful. And I would say about half of the multiple choice questions on this test could be checked or solved in that way. So in class, for the rest of class, we will be looking through the test. that we've already done, but on a blank one, and kind of looking for where we can use tricks. But that's the gist of how you use multiple choice tricks when you're taking the Regents.